Our protagonist finds himself in the tiny body of a newborn worker ant, a weak creature that can't even move much dirt yet. He's surrounded by giant, hungry beasts that want to snack on him immediately, so his only plan is to run away and grow strong enough to fight back later. Not long ago, he was a regular person. He remembers just hanging out at home with a book before waking up in a vast, white, empty space. He quickly realizes he has passed away, but instead of a heaven with food and pools, he gets a message about a new life. A guide tells him he's heading to a world called Panga, where his future depends on luck. While his stats look okay at first, he's disappointed to see his skills are just things like biting and shooting acid. He can't believe he's being reborn as a bug. Without any magic, his dreams of being a cool wizard are over. He wonders if he's being punished for something, but he was a massive introvert with no friends, so that seems unlikely. The guide pushes him to start his journey as the countdown begins. After a brief silence, he wakes up feeling extremely cramped and uncomfortable. He realizes the system wasn't joking. He really is an ant. He checks his new form and finds 6 legs, 2 feelers, and strong jaws. It's like a bad dream, especially since he used to keep ants as pets. It's pitch black and his vision is a mess, but he eventually sees a dim blue light in the distance. He tries to use his antennae to figure out where he is, picking up dusty smells and air movements that suggest he's deep underground. He's worried because he doesn't smell any other ants nearby, and he really doesn't want to be a loner in this life too. Luckily, after wandering for a bit, he catches a familiar scent. He starts heading toward a glowing light, hoping to find a friend or a brother from his colony to help him survive. His excitement built up the more he approached the doorway. He scurried forward with joy to meet another ant, ready to help with any job needed for the fame of the nest. However, reaching the end of the passage didn't go the way he thought it would. His potential friend seemed to be in massive trouble, tossed through the air against his will. On the far side stood a terrifying monster, smiling wide with rows of sharp teeth out for everyone to see. It had thick muscles hidden under a tough layer of bumpy scales. It was a total nightmare for a creature as tiny as Anthony. With the other ant defeated, the lizard-like beast was free to eat its catch while acting smug. It didn't even swallow the ant whole. Instead, it crunched the poor guy into tiny bits first. Anthony began to freak out. He was just a person who liked books and insects. He never agreed to any of this. As much as he wanted to deny it, this was actually happening. This was his new life, ants getting eaten and crushed by monsters. The other ant, pinned under the beast's foot, looked at him with begging eyes, which served as a huge wake-up call. What could one lone ant even do right now? Well, only one idea came to Anthony's mind. It was his only option. He had to bolt as fast as his 6 brand-new legs could carry him. He had to run for his life, because his life literally depended on it. Moving in a new body for the first time made him super clumsy. He even tripped and crashed face first. After sprinting for a long while, he figured he must have left that monster's area. But what if another one just strolled down the path and saw him as a light snack? His only chance to survive was to stop acting like a human and start thinking like an ant, as if he knew what to do by instinct. He had to dig. He had to dig as hard as possible. Knowing what an ant does is one thing, but actually doing it is another. His legs weren't doing much. He was just scratching at the dirt. That's when Anthony thought back to when he watched his pets. Ants use their jaws to move earth, so he basically had to dig into the ground using his face. Without losing another moment, he stuck his trusty jaws into the hard dirt and started biting away. Now, that is what you call real digging. He did more work in a few seconds using his face than he did in several minutes using his legs. Once he reached a good depth, he hollowed out a round space with enough room to move around. With his new hideout finished, Anthony could finally rest on his back after a tough day. He was safe for the moment, but being seen by other creatures would be a death sentence. How did he even end up here? It hadn't even been a whole day, and he had already met a scary monster. New ants are supposed to be born inside a safe colony, protected by friends. Looking at what happened to that poor ant back in the lizard's area, things were clearly a mess. He might not be the only one stuck in this bad spot, which meant a raid was probably going on. Having some time to think, Anthony remembered that the system guide mentioned something about skill points and biomass. The world Anthony lives in now is a total mystery. The arrival of the system helped civilization gain a lot, but people can't remember what they lost in exchange. Back to Anthony's problem. He currently has 1 skill point and 1 biomass to use. He has to use them wisely. If this is like a video game, there should be a menu he can open. At first, he tried lifting his legs and yelling, "Level up," into the air. Not only did it fail, but he also felt like an idiot. Then, another idea hit him. Maybe this would work. He firmly swiped at the empty air in front of him and shouted, "Status open," as loud as he could, and it actually worked. A very cool text box popped up right in front of him. He still couldn't tell if his numbers were high or low, but he could at least see them clearly now. In the skills section, he noticed grip. He figured it meant he could hold on to things well. The info said that grip is the power to stay attached to surfaces and items without slipping. One way to use it is being able to walk right up walls. Anthony's eyes lit up with happiness after seeing that. This could be the kind and successful return of Lord Gandalf, the system, his true savior. Even if he was just a box of text, Anthony imagined he must have the most impressive beard and eyebrows ever. Since he didn't have a better name for this helpful voice, Gandalf would have to do for now, and Anthony felt thankful for being given the amazing gift of seeing important info just by thinking about it. Looking over his list of skills, he knew that making the right choice was super important. Should he pick the acid shot, or would making his digging better give him more perks? Gandalf was great, but it was up to Anthony to figure out how to use his powers. He knew that many ants back on Earth could spray acid from their tails, so he must be one of those scary acid-spraying types. This gave him the chance to hit enemies without getting too close, which might keep him from being crushed instantly in a fight. Having a long-range move would be great, but given his current mess, biting or digging weren't the most important things to worry about yet. What Anthony really needed was information. He still had no clue where he was or what other monsters lived here besides ants and those lizard beasts. He was pretty sure he didn't have a voice, so he only had himself to count on while exploring the dark tunnels. Going out there alone with unknown horrors was crazy, and just thinking about what could kill a tiny ant was terrifying. Anthony had to force himself to calm down before he had a total panic attack. He needed to be smart and relaxed to survive. After a quick pep talk, he got focused. He was on his own from here on out. He understood his basic moves, so now he just had to use his points. The big question was how to actually do it. The answer appeared right as he thought of it, with Gandalf giving him a prompt to use his points. He couldn't stop praising the wise and wonderful system voice, wishing for Gandalf's beard to stay fluffy forever. There were so many choices that it was tough to pick the best one, so he tried to be logical. Being faster would help him run away, and having tunnel sense would make it easier to find his way underground. Biting and acid were just for fighting when things got bad. As for fixing up his body with biomass, he could pick his shell, jaws, legs, eyes, feelers, or acid gland. It was pretty obvious that he was the weakest thing around, so he decided to upgrade his eyesight with his biomass point. Then, he spent his skill point on stealth to help him hide and move quietly. Once he confirmed it, his eyes started burning like crazy, as if a fire had started right in his head. The sudden pain felt like Gandalf had tricked him, and he rolled on the floor trying to make it stop. But once the stinging went away, he realized the change was actually quite fast. If he were still human, it would have taken forever to heal. Now he had a way to handle the dangers outside. With some new confidence, he crawled out of his hole because it was time to look around. His vision was much sharper now. He didn't smell anything strange or feel any shaking nearby. He had to choose between two paths. The right way led to the monster that ate the other ants, so that was a bad idea. That left him with only one option: go left and face whatever was waiting for him. The scared ant was gone, and he was ready. Anthony, the bold scout, was now in charge. He scurried along as quickly as he could, and he was actually making great time. He chuckled to himself, feeling like his journey was finally going smoothly without any problems. It made sense to him that hanging from the ceiling would boost both his sneaking and his climbing abilities. Now, he just needed to put his upgraded sight to the test. Compared to how things were before, he could definitely see a bit more clearly. He even noticed strange, twisting blue lines running through the stones like veins. With his better vision, he could also check on his own physical state. He knew that, over time, a baby ant's soft, pale shell is supposed to turn hard and tough. As he kept crawling, he eventually hit the end of the passage and was met with a light so bright it made him blink. It was glowing from those blue veins and a large pool of water inside a massive cave. The pond was giant, but the monsters standing around it were just as big. He was so distracted by the water that he almost missed the scary creatures waiting nearby. Realizing he was likely the weakest thing there, he knew being spotted meant instant death. Being stealthy wasn't just about staying alive, it was the only way to learn more about his surroundings. When it came to his eyes, he knew firsthand that having bad vision was the worst. He was so used to seeing like a human that switching to a bug's point of view was confusing. If a target wasn't moving, he could hardly see it at all. It's important to remember that ants are meant to live in groups. They are thousands or millions of small beings working together to be powerful. A lone ant has weak senses, but they usually make up for it by staying united. That's exactly why his current situation was so bad. He was all by himself, and with his blurry sight, he could easily walk right into a sleeping dragon. Because of this, he was set on making his vision a top priority and wouldn't be happy until he could see a bug move through 5 meters of solid rock. After a while, Anthony noticed his new red shell had finally developed. As he looked down from a cliff over the water, he started hearing terrible sounds coming from all directions. He moved toward the walls, knowing he had to get a better look at what was happening. After a few minutes of climbing and rushing to the peak, he was almost at the place where the noise was coming from. He scanned the ground with his better eyes, but just couldn't find the exact spot. It was hard to focus with all those weird blue lines moving around on the rocks and getting in his way. He noticed water dripping from the roof and realized that was how the pool was filled, but that shouldn't be the cause of the creepy sounds he was hearing. Anthony really had to focus because there was obviously something he was missing. It was obvious, but he hadn't put the pieces together yet. Of course, it was the monsters making those sounds. From his safe spot on the ceiling, he watched a growling wolf-like creature below. When he saw the beast's eyes start to look in his direction, he dove behind a jagged rock. That was way too close for comfort. He decided it was finally time to try out his new power. Anthony activated his brand new stealth skill, and his red shell immediately became see-through. It looked incredible. With his body hidden, he could finally watch the pool area without worrying. He already had a clear view of that ugly wolf lizard that nearly caught him. The next thing he noticed was his biggest enemy, the one that had killed the other ants, the homewrecker and kidnapper itself, the nasty croc beast. No matter how much he studied the group of monsters, Anthony felt like something was very strange. None of these predators were fighting one another. It was as if they had some kind of secret peace deal or a meeting at a round table. Anthony didn't rule out the idea that he had missed a big monster peace treaty. He knew he wouldn't get any real answers just by staying in one spot. Moving a bit closer to the action might help, but he had to keep telling himself that being slow and careful was the best way to win. It took him a few minutes to crawl down from the ceiling given his small size. If ants were able to sweat, he would have been soaking wet, with enough water dripping off him to fill a second pond in that strange cave. But his hard work paid off. Moving around with his stealth active caused the skill to reach level 2. He had covered quite a bit of ground to get down to where everything was happening. His first hunch about how skills work was right on the money. By using them over and over, he can level them up to be even better. Sneaking around and watching the monsters would let him hit 2 targets with one effort. He could gather vital data while simultaneously training his hiding ability. Even though he felt his confidence growing, he had to tell himself to settle down and stay focused. Acting too arrogant like that was a huge mistake. If he gets caught, he's basically dead. Once he calmed his nerves, he moved in close enough to get a good look at the next group of monsters hanging out by the water. There were creatures all bunched up in a mess, making it difficult to figure out what they actually were. As he got closer, he was met with the sight of glowing red eyes, blue claws, and legs. Way too many legs. Anthony caught a glimpse of the gross bodies of the centipedes and felt like he was going to be sick. He cursed this terrible dungeon for forcing him to look at something so nasty. He really felt like he needed some medicine to handle the sight. As for the final resident of this awful place, the lizard monster didn't seem quite as bad as the others. Still, he knew he had to keep an eye on those dangerous spikes. He might be the weakest one there at the moment, but Anthony could see a future where he turned all these scary beasts into a big pile of biomass. All the upgrade points he could ever want were just sitting there waiting for him. But to make that happen, he had to plan everything out perfectly. Over the following few hours, he stayed perched above the pond, slowly moving his body to make sure he stayed out of sight. He watched exactly how the monsters moved, paying close attention to where they went when they finished drinking. In the first hour, the centipedes and the croc beast were the first to leave. Oddly enough, they all headed toward the same exit. During the second hour, the wolf lizards decided to call it a day and went straight for a tiny tunnel on the south side. By the third hour of watching, the last one to leave the water was the spiky lizard, which crawled up a wall and vanished. It turned out there was another wall climber here besides Anthony. He might have called the reptile a brother if it weren't for the fact that he eventually had to hunt it down. That long session of spying pushed his stealth skill up to level 3. In a place like this, being patient really pays off. It happened at the perfect moment, too, because his tired ant body really needed a rest. Once he reached his exit, his cozy home was just a quick dig away. Anthony wished he could just kick back and relax, but he knew he couldn't stop yet. There was still a lot of work to do. First, he really needed more space to breathe in his little camp. That meant he had to get back to digging. Using his powerful jaws, he started chewing through the dirt with excitement. He naturally began piling up the soil as he worked to make his home safer. Just as his digging reached level 2, a message popped up to congratulate him on making a proper nest. Finally, after working like a crazy person, he could take a short break. He started feeling a familiar sensation, like the times his family forgot to send him cash or leave food in the house. He was getting hungry, and he knew that feeling all too well. As his stomach started to growl, he told himself he just had to wait a bit longer. When he woke up, he would go out and catch his first meal. He already knew exactly which spiky target he was going after. The next morning arrived quickly, and Anthony was back on the ceiling of the cave. His feet gripped the cold stone as one single thought took over his brain. He was so incredibly hungry that he was actually drooling while looking at the monsters below him. But being this hungry made him feel weak and shaky. He was losing his energy little by little. His head was filled with images of candy, bread, cake, and steak. All the tasty food he used to eat in his human life was spinning around in his mind. The hunger had become so intense that his brain was starting to mess with him. The last time he looked at the croc beast, he could have sworn it looked like a big piece of ham, and he almost jumped off the ceiling to take a bite. Even those gross centipedes were starting to look like a big bowl of yummy noodles served on a fancy plate. Anthony knew he had to fix this hunger issue fast before he did something stupid and got himself killed by trying to eat the wrong thing. He had been planning his next move for way too long to let a hungry stomach ruin his work. 2 days. He had spent 2 entire days preparing for this moment. He looked at every tiny detail of this side of the cave until he knew it by heart. Between 2 days of almost no rest and the feeling of starving to death, he was having a very hard time just keeping his eyes open. He had spent so much time dangling upside down over the water that he almost fell asleep and tumbled in several times. Looking at that strange pond, he knew that falling in would be a swim he wouldn't enjoy at all. One good thing about pushing himself to the limit as a spy with his stealth on was that the skill reached level 4. Because he spent his free time digging and making his hideout bigger, his digging skill also went up to level 3. That is just how Anthony operates. He gets ready and he gets better. That is how a weak bug can take down a strong monster. Still, being hungry is a very tough battle. He could only hope that he would catch his first meal very soon. As his feelers moved, he could tell his target was getting close. He could already pick up the gross smell coming from the creature. When Anthony saw the light reflecting off a pair of lizard eyes inside a crack in the rock, he knew it was almost time for the show to start. His chosen target had been using the cave wall as a place to sleep, crawling down for a drink once every day. It was basically a loner with a routine he could predict, which meant it was a monster that could be beaten. After a few minutes, the spiky lizard finally left its hole for its daily water break. It was finally time to see if all of Anthony's hard work would pay off. Turning on his stealth, he walked quietly along the wall, trying to catch up to the reptile. He promised his stomach that they wouldn't have to wait much longer. He just needed to get into the perfect spot to hit it, and the plan would work. Looking closer at the lizard's spikes, he knew that getting poked by one would be terrible, but he couldn't let himself get scared now. Being afraid only ruins your focus, and his stomach was counting on him. He had practiced so much that he couldn't let anything distract him. The timing of his jump would decide everything. Once he reached the spot he planned on, Anthony didn't waste a moment to strike. His stealth let him spray his acid shot from above, hitting one of the lizard's legs. Anthony was already cheering in his head because the first part of the plan worked. As he came out of hiding, the lizard was screaming in pain because its leg was melting down to the bone. When the prey finally saw who caused the injury, the second part of the plan started. He teased the lizard, asking if it really wanted to fight on a wall, which was basically asking to die. Anthony's amazing climbing skill was already at level 3 after all his spying. Neither the wall nor the lizard would be a problem for him. Plus, he had the natural edge of being fast and light, while the beast was heavy and slow. With its feet burning from the acid, moving around on the wall was going to be impossible for the beast. But the dumb creature was too angry to think. It used its powerful tail to try and knock Anthony down. With a lot of power behind the tail strike, the cave wall was smashed, but Anthony jumped away to a safe spot just in time. Everything was going exactly how he wanted. He was basically playing with his dinner now. His next acid spray was aimed right at the lizard's face. Another burn. Another round of the monster shaking in pain on the ground. Quickly hopping along the cave walls, Anthony moved to a safer and better position. The loud cries of pain from the lizard bounced all around the water area. That was Anthony's signal to finish this fast, as he couldn't let another monster show up and ruin the fight he started. Giving in to the acid burns, the lizard began to move slower. It was almost time for it to go away for good, but before it lost all its power, the lizard had one last tail hit left in it. This move was more than Anthony expected. The quick lunge and tail smack caught him by surprise. Luckily, he was far enough away that he had a tiny second to react and jump out of the way. With the lizard's last bit of energy wasted on a miss, Anthony's opening to end it all finally appeared. From high up on the ceiling, he dove down with his jaws open, ready to bite and hold on tight. A loud and crunchy snap echoed through the area by the pond. Anthony refused to let go of the creature's rough hide because it was time for the last part of his plan. This final step was basic, a test of pure will as he kept his jaws locked onto the beast until they both tumbled off the wall. Making sure the lizard was underneath him, he let the monster soak up all the impact from the fall while he kept biting down without mercy. When the lizard finally stopped struggling, he gave a quick apology, knowing that in this world, food is food. Anthony began spraying acid all over the lizard to help break through its thick skin. During this, his acid shot skill even reached level 2. That was a fast upgrade. Checking his catch, he saw the poor thing was still clinging to life, which meant he had to finish the job the messy way for both of them. Anthony started eating the dying lizard's tough body, with blood and mess covering the floor as the sound of crunching filled the space. After a while, his bite skill climbed to level 3. It took 10 long minutes, but the grim task was finally over. Feeling energized by the meal, Anthony felt like a true adventurer. He felt like a warrior returning from a life-or-death struggle, the he came, he saw, he conquered type of feeling. He had literally eaten his enemy after winning. Thinking about it now, he realized he had never worked this hard for anything before. In his old life, he never really pushed himself and mostly felt bored or numb. But now, he had taken down a level 2 Spinata, reaching level 2 himself thanks to the experience points. He also got a brand new skill point. Gandalf was suddenly very chatty with all the alerts. So, this lizard was called a Spinetta laertos, a name that sounded a bit like Latin. This wasn't the first time he noticed Latin words here, since his own kind was called formica. Remembering his old hobby of keeping ants, he knew formica was the Latin word for wood ants. If every monster here had a Latin name, his book knowledge would definitely be useful. Besides that discovery, he learned 3 big things about his new life. First, he can get experience to level up by beating other creatures. Second, he gets a valuable skill point to spend every time he levels up. And third, since that lizard was level 2, he figured it was either born that way or had leveled up once itself. Most importantly, he couldn't forget his main goal, taking the body of his prey to make himself stronger. As a hunter, he had to eat to grow, consuming the meat of both the strong and the weak. Anthony was thankful for the meal, but don't get it twisted, the lizard tasted disgusting. It was so bad it almost made him want to throw up again. However, since he ate meat from a new source of biomass, he earned 1 point for his body. Gandalf just wouldn't stop talking today. Lying in the cave, his hungry stomach was now full of loud burps. He should be good on food for at least the next week. Along with a full belly, he had more rewards from the system to look at. For now, it was time to head back to his hideout to plan his next move. Once he got to the top of the cave, Anthony looked down at the beasts below. They were totally focused on the water and didn't even notice that one of their own was gone. After scurrying around for a few minutes, Anthony finally made it back to his simple nest, rubbing his legs together like a movie villain while he started plotting. First, he checked his new status after the hunt. His main stats hadn't changed much, but his skills had improved a ton. He couldn't help but feel like a lone ant on a wild adventure, growing faster than anyone expected. Even with bad luck and strange turns, he was going to win. No matter how hard things got, he was going to survive. But that is quite enough dreaming for one day. He needs to stop floating in the clouds and get back to being realistic. Shaking his head from side to side, Anthony focused entirely on the here and now. At this moment, he has to make another very important choice, and it demands that he be extremely careful. He only has 2 biomass points available to use, so he must weigh every single option with great detail. His eyes kept drifting back to the same spot, his eye mutation. He truly wanted to upgrade his vision to level 2 for the sake of finally seeing the light. When the voice of Gandalf asked if he was ready to spend both biomass points to reach that next stage, Anthony confirmed it without a second of doubt. He really could not get accustomed to the sudden sensation of his eyes burning up just to get an upgrade. He absolutely hated that stinging heat. After a bit, his eyes were leaking water from the agony, but the process was finally finished. His vision right now is still much worse than what a normal human sees, but it will have to work for the time being. Now he has to use his one skill point. Fortunately, this choice wouldn't be very difficult because he already had a specific skill in mind for a while, and that skill is tunnel sense. He has been stuck in this awful place for several days, yet he remains clueless about most of what goes on here. There are simply too many mysteries in this world, so having tunnel sense could be essential for staying alive in the long run. By using this new power, he can basically grow the range of everything he does. It would let him travel much further than his usual spots while still making sure he can find his way back to his only safe place, his nest. When Gandalf asked him to confirm, Anthony happily did so with a tiny grin on his face. Getting a brand new skill felt completely different from the painful body changes. He felt like it was similar to water running through his hair during a shower, except the feeling was flowing deep inside his brain. After a few seconds, Gandalf told him that tunnel sense was now his. He could only hope it would prove how useful it was during his next scouting trip. Anthony picked up some leaves from the cave and put them together to make a bed. Before he goes back out to explore, he truly deserves a nice and cozy nap. While he was sleeping, the sound of people walking was getting closer. Two people who looked like humans were moving through a thick forest with only one light. The woman asked the man if he noticed something. He told her it was nothing and that his mind was just playing tricks on him lately. Besides, no matter where they are headed, any monster that tried to mess with them would be in for a very nasty surprise. With his stomach no longer hurting from hunger, Anthony felt like he was sleeping in total happiness. It was so nice that he wanted to stay there forever. But his perfect dream was cut short when he was suddenly shaken awake. He ended up rolling right out of his bed and landing face first on the hard floor below. Looking back, he should have known that would happen. Dreams that good are never real, but it gave him the focus to stop thinking about things he can't have. It is time to get back to scouting and making a map for his next hunt. Anthony the ant let out a sneaky laugh. Before doing all that hard work, there was one more thing he wanted to attempt. Using his feelers to make a little heart shape, he shouted, "Unlock!" in his mind like a hero from a cartoon. When that failed, he tried using the words access profile. He thought about using Gandalf's style by saying open sesame like in the old stories, but he didn't even try it. He really believed one of those tricks would do what he wanted. After eating the lizard, Gandalf told him he had unlocked a basic info page on the Spinetta Lertos, but he was having a hard time finding the right word to open the stupid thing. It finally hit him that maybe he had been making the whole thing way too complicated this entire time. So he let go of his nest ceiling, dropped to the ground, and shouted the Latin name of the lizard while doing a cool hero landing. To his surprise, it actually worked. The entire basic info sheet of his very first prey was now open for him to study. Gandalf really does look out for him at times like this. Spinetta Lertos can be translated to mean thorn lizard. It has sharp needles on its back that carry a very dangerous poison. After all the hassle he endured, that tiny bit of data was the only reward he received. It was a letdown, but Anthony had to pull himself together. After all, the system did specify it was only a basic profile. Maybe the system unlocks things in stages. If he manages to hunt and eat more of that same kind, he might get a more thorough look at their stats and secrets. He decided to push that aside for the moment because he had much more important things to do. As he set off for his next job, his trek back to watch the pool felt much easier, and he even sang a bit while walking across the ceiling. Another day meant another monster to turn into a meal. From what he could see, not much had changed since he went back to his nest to eat. He did notice one small thing, though. With his new +2 eyes, the pond below seemed to be shining a bit more than it used to. What really made him curious in this situation was the water itself. On his very first day here, he almost became a snack for that croc beast, but all that running never made him thirsty. On the third day, he found leaves for his bed and still didn't need a drink. By day 6, after stuffing himself with lizard meat, he still didn't have a single craving for water. There had to be something amazing about this water to make monsters behave. Anthony was sure it wasn't just about being thirsty. He knew he couldn't stop himself from being curious, even if he didn't really want to drink it. Anthony gathered his courage, shut his eyes, and dipped his face into the water to take a gulp. His first reaction was to leap back and roll around because the water felt like pure fire on his tongue. The bit he swallowed made his stomach feel like it was burning up. It felt like he had just swallowed battery acid for some weird reason. Is this really what all these creatures were coming here for? Were they really visiting this place every day just for this painful, burning drink of death? If that's true, then what was wrong with them? Was Anthony reborn in a cave filled with monsters that liked pain? He still felt like he was missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Aside from the stinging heat, there was basically no impact on his health. Given how popular it seemed to be, he was waiting for something amazing to happen since every monster around was obsessed with this pond for days. But for him, there was no reaction, nothing at all. Since he had finished what he came for, he decided it was time to check out other parts of the cave. Before leaving, he just couldn't stop himself from taking one last drink. This time, he gulped down as much of the liquid as his little body could possibly take. Just like the first time, it really hurt. He had to roll around on the ground, coughing up what he had swallowed because of the intense pain. After spitting out most of the water, he decided the stuff was just plain awful. He told himself never to touch it again, no matter what happens. Now that he had finished checking out the mystery of the pond, he planned to grow his exploration of the rest of the cave system using his new tunnel sense. With this power, traveling was much easier. All he had to do was follow the areas where the glowing blue veins were thickest. Along the way, he surprisingly picked up a scent coming from far off. It made him wonder what kind of other beings were hiding in these dark paths. While moving and thinking, he suddenly ran into something that looked very familiar. It was a structure made by people to connect a high place and a low place by breaking it into small steps. Those were definitely stairs. Looking down the path of the steps, Anthony saw that those twisting blue lines were there too. Feeling curious and excited, he rushed down to get a better look. It looked like these steps had been cut right out of the stone. There was even fancy artwork on every single step. He asked himself who would take the time to carve into solid rock. Why humans, of course. He was halfway down when he wondered why anyone would bother putting stairs in this specific tunnel and not the others. Well, for someone who thought he was a genius, the answer was obvious. This path must be used all the time. That's why people made it easier to walk up and down. This meant there was a good chance more stairs were nearby. Maybe there was even a way to get to the surface so he could finally leave this dangerous cave behind. That thought gave Anthony the heart to keep going. Away. Even though this darkness was great for a sneaky bug like him, he couldn't get rid of the feeling that something was wrong. His heart was thumping in his chest, filled with a mix of intense feelings. There is a real chance of meeting an actual person from a different world. Isn't that amazing? He already has a long list of questions ready in his head. What do they look like? What kind of fantasy race are they? Do they use magic? Maybe there is a guild for explorers who go into dungeons. Perhaps he could talk to them using hand signs or a weird kind of dance. Anthony's imagination was going wild, and he was already dreaming of a huge peace treaty between ants and humans. He was pretty sure humans don't often meet a monster that has a human mind trapped inside. It's possible he is the very first one. As he went deeper into the cave, it became tighter and the ground got steeper. It didn't take long for a bright flash to hit his fuzzy eyes. Looking up, he saw a gap in the cave roof, and if he was right, real sunlight was pouring in. It's the first time he has felt the sun here. He told the light he was sorry for not appreciating it enough in his old life. Finding the sunlight made him realize the surface was much closer than he first guessed. Looking the other way, there were more lights ahead, which probably meant more human buildings. Before he could even finish that thought, Anthony came across a wooden door that was slightly open. Based on how it looked, he guessed it might be a room for guards, a guard post right in the middle of a dungeon, but the strangest thing was the red glow coming out of the window. This light was different because it moved along with the sound of quick footsteps. Who would have guessed it was actually humans, real people wearing light armor and carrying some kind of glowing tool? Anthony just stood there, impressed by a device that could probably find monsters. Since these caves are so dark, it must be hard for them to walk around and find things. While the woman held the tool, the man started making a magical glow appear in his hands. It felt like a dream to see it for real, but Anthony knew this was magic. Actual magic. He thanked Gandalf for sending him to a world with spells. He was already hoping these people might show him a few tricks. While our hero was getting excited about the possibilities, the man started pointing his arms right at Anthony. Wait, wasn't that red stone supposed to find monsters? That means it's working right now. Because he got so excited that he forgot he is a monster too, Anthony was now in a spot where a magic spell was aimed right at him. He's in big trouble. It wasn't meant to happen like this, right? He just made a silly mistake, but the only smart move left was to run away like a bug. Run, Anthony, run! He tried to ask the humans for mercy, but he can't talk. To make it even worse, he tripped over a rock while trying to get away. Anthony just wanted to show them he was a tiny, safe little ant. But the sphere of flame made of magic was already flying straight at him. He didn't get hit head-on, but his legs were hurting badly from stumbling and sprinting. His brain told him to move, but his body just wouldn't listen. Stuck and unable to move, even more balls of fire were shot at the poor ant. He had to dig deep and find every bit of strength left in his muscles to make one more run for it. He tried using the stone pillars for safety, but even that didn't help much. From a different direction, a single arrow nearly stabbed right through his middle. If he wanted to get out of this mess alive, he needed a distraction that actually worked. But first, he had to find a way to reach safety. He scrambled through various paths, using his tunnel sense to figure out if a route was actually a good idea or a dead end. After checking 3 different ways, Anthony found a tunnel that smelled absolutely terrible. The humans were right behind him, so he decided to act like a real monster and sprayed a double acid shot at both of them. It didn't really stop the 2 of them, it just made them fire back with another arrow. Anthony was getting better at moving quickly, dodging the whistling arrow by ducking down. One thing was certain, his dream of humans and ants being a rock. Luckily, thanks to the system's help, he managed to stay alive and find a tiny spot to catch his breath inside a small crawl space. Thinking about what just took place, he started to get mad at himself for being so dumb about the whole situation. He forgot to remind himself that he isn't a person anymore. Because of that, his human rights were gone too. From here on out, he has to remember that he is a meter-long monster ant every time he runs into anyone else. On the other side of the tight tunnel, scary hissing noises started to echo. He might have failed earlier, but he needed to focus right now. Anthony had to decide what was better for him, facing the hissing centipedes ahead or the fireballs from the humans behind. But when the man chasing him with fire poked his head into the small tunnel, it looked like the decision was made for him. Anthony floored it and started running for his life as more fire started forming in the man's hand. Luckily, he was quick enough to vanish into the dark before the magic was ready. Using his tunnel sense, he perfectly moved through the tight paths of the cave. Feeling that the group of centipedes wasn't too far away, he pumped himself up for a wild plan. All he had to do was use the centipede monsters as bait to stop the humans. Fortunately, he has his stealth skill to hide from the gross pile of dangerous bugs. He figured he could use his acid spray as a guaranteed way to make the insects mad, but whatever happened next would decide if he lived or died. Getting away from the angry crowd would be a total race against the clock, and he wasn't sure if he could actually do it. Turning off his stealth mode, he knew there were no other choices left, so it was now or never. He carefully pointed his tail at the group and started spraying his burning acid shot at the creatures. It was a perfect shot that hit almost every centipede in the pile, but the acid just wasn't strong enough to melt through their bodies. That was okay, though. He wasn't trying to kill them anyway. He got exactly what he wanted. He made the pile of deadly centipedes furious. They immediately started chasing our ant hero with their countless legs. Now the real race had started. After several minutes of sprinting, Anthony was almost crying because of the disaster he had created. Getting back to the tunnel entrance was taking way too long. At this pace, he would run out of energy before the plan could work. Along the way, he almost got eaten a few times as the centipedes jumped at him with their scary bites. Seeing the light at the end of the path, Anthony found a final burst of energy to reach the other side. Help was finally waiting. Like a crazy bug, he lunged out of the small tunnel where the man was standing by, expecting him to come out and get burned to a crisp. The man never expected that it would turn into a massive monster party, as the centipede army also poured out of the hole like disgusting trains. Anthony landed safely, while all the chaos broke out. All he had to do now was make his getaway. But that is easier to say than to actually do when a terrifying crawling beast has been made angry enough to follow him to the ends of the earth. Running wouldn't help him anymore. He just curled his body up and kept praying over and over that he didn't want to die. As if Anthony's desperate prayers actually reached a god, the centipede monsters started exploding before they could get to him. You might ask who was blowing up and slicing the giant centipedes. Well, it was the humans from the other side of the tunnel who were just trying to hunt an ant. Anthony kept his head low, not wanting to draw any attention or violence toward himself. He wondered if this was his big break to get away from the mess. He whispered an apology to himself as he carefully crept through the middle of the fight. It would have been a perfect getaway if some of the wandering centipedes hadn't spotted him and started chasing him like stubborn little pests. He was so busy looking at what was happening behind him that he accidentally slammed into a human leg in front of him because he wasn't being careful. Anthony scrambled back just before a human spinning spear tried to poke him from above. Luckily, the spear hit that was meant for him ended up hitting the centipedes that were right on his tail. Once again, Anthony felt thankful to Gandalf, the system, for giving him such amazing luck. He had been saved over and over by a higher power's perfectly timed help. He would love to thank the bearded wizard more, but he was still in a lot of trouble. His luck wouldn't be enough to stop the two enemies trying to catch up from the back. Enemy number 1 was the human guard, and enemy number 2 was the centipede beast. After getting some space in the middle of all the madness, Anthony managed to turn on his stealth. He started planning his next move. Where could he possibly hide in a place like this? He saw an open door leading to who knows where and decided that was his only choice for now. He managed to find a hiding spot using his stealth power and quiet movements. From behind the walls of the doorway, he watched the war between the humans and the centipedes that he had started. He felt bad about making his fellow monsters fight the human guards, but the situation didn't give him any other options. It was a choice between dying by a human sword or exploding from human magic, or letting his neighbors fight the guards instead. Meanwhile, in the quiet city of Lyria, the hard-working commander Titus was in his office working late into the night. The wrinkles on his face got deeper from all the stress because some fools just wouldn't leave the dungeon problem to him and his soldiers. If it were up to the old commander, he would be in the dungeon all day and night instead of being stuck in a dark office, burning candles and doing boring paperwork. Lately, his job was just saying the same thing a million times to people who didn't know anything, instead of getting to use his favorite weapon. He almost smashed his desk in half because he was so annoyed. That was his sign to calm down and get some fresh air for a bit. Walking out of the dim office, the soldiers outside stood up straight for the commander. Commander Titus didn't even look at them. He just walked right out of the building. Another heavy door opened, and another group of soldiers stood at attention for their brave leader. Everywhere he went, everyone stopped what they were doing. He was like a god in that place. The commander kept going until he reached a plain wooden door with 2 armed guards on each side. Commander Titus asked for a report on the situation from Tribune Aurelia, and she quickly gave him the facts. 15 minutes ago, a monster came near this guard post before running away. The guard team told the captain on duty and then went deeper into the cave. From the human guard's point of view, they were fighting a gross ant monster. They were hunting something that deserved to be destroyed, with the hottest flames and the sharpest swords. Titus thought that report was very strange. He made sure to ask if the monster had truly run away, instead of attacking directly. He immediately headed for the plain wooden door, which worried Tribune Aurelia, who asked where he was off to. The leader simply said he was going to join the hunt himself. Commander Titus was very interested in the idea of a monster smart enough to escape from a fight. On the other side of that door, the guards were still in the middle of a brutal war with the centipedes. The magic users were using their strongest fires to torch the creatures. No matter how wild the centipedes acted, they couldn't win against the strength of magic. Anthony tried to move to a better spot, but he ended up stuck in the center of the chaos, only staying safe because of his stealth power. It was easy to see that this wasn't even a real battle anymore. It was just a one-sided massacre. Anthony felt completely helpless. He wasn't strong enough to help out in a fight like this. It's not like he could cut down enemies with some kind of long-distance jaw attack. Whenever he feels lost like this, he usually asks the system for help. Instead of getting a tip from Gandalf, he got a mental slap from his old human self. He thanked that memory for waking him up when he needed it most. Looking at the bright side, this string of bad luck confirmed many things he wanted to know. First, it proved magic is real through human spells. Second, there is a human society here. Also, there is a giant gap in power between his ant body and those humans. He also learned a very important lesson. Health points are the most important stat. After being hit by flying rocks and burned by fire, his health dropped to a dangerous level. He was down to 15 HP, which was about half his total. At least he finally knew how much punishment he could take in a real fight. The downside is that he now has to find a way to fix those injuries. He thinks his health might come back slowly over time, but it might be more complex than that, and he might need to find a way to heal himself manually. Either way, he couldn't let the chance he created go to waste. A huge pile of monster bodies was spread across the floor like an all-you-can-eat meal. Some were even pre-cooked by the fire. He had to focus now because there was a mountain of biomass waiting to be eaten. Anthony followed his basic instincts to eat things stronger than him, getting better and collecting biomass with every second. It took him a long time to get through the whole spread, but his reward was massive. By the time he finished, he could hardly move or breathe because he was so stuffed. During the whole meal, he tried to imagine he was eating a royal feast, just like Gandalf intended. In his head, the centipedes were cooked perfectly and served to look delicious. But the truth always hits once the food touches his tongue and goes down his throat. There's no hiding it. These centipede monsters taste absolutely disgusting. Thinking about how much of that gross meat he just ate almost made Anthony sick. Ignoring the bad flavor, the biomass he earned was way more important. His big meal unlocked the basic info for his prey, the Unguis scalendra. He opened the file right away, and it was still pretty much useless. It just said the claw centipede has a powerful claw and a poison stinger in its tail. Before using his new biomass, he wanted to check his status. Everything was going well with his skills and numbers. Plus, his health had finally started to slowly return. Now he has 2 biomass points to spend on whatever he wants. According to the old rules of the system, all living things can grow, but only those who work together can reach the very end. Plonking down in the safety of his humble house, Anthony could finally catch his breath after a wild day. All he could do was hope to glorious Gandalf for a much quieter time today. He has 2 big jobs he wants to get done right now. The first is leveling up his eyes to +3. He still needs 1 more point of biomass to finish that boost. To make sure he doesn't mess everything up, he figured moving his hideout needs to happen immediately after. Following some much-needed sleep, Anthony got straight to work. The second he walked out of his cozy spot, he saw the battle between the humans and the bugs still going strong. His hope for a perfect day totally burned down. Even so, the job isn't going to do itself. Staying tucked away from everyone's sight, Anthony crept away from the hot war zone. He moved through the caves like a pro while staying hidden. He really wondered what those troops were doing in this awful place. They have been working so hard to kill every single monster they find. When he made it to the magical pond, Anthony saw that the human soldiers had completely taken over the spot. He saw such cool tech and glowing crystals hanging over the water and was totally impressed. Anthony shook his head and got his head back in the game. This isn't the time to stare at magic if it means getting caught. As the days pass, the dream of leaving this place alive feels like it's getting further away. It would be way too arrogant to think he could sneak past a whole army looking like he does now. Hiding in his hole also carries the risk of getting found by a raid. Looking at things realistically, there is only one real path left to take. But without enough power-ups, that path will surely end in his early death. He might not even get a tiny ant coffin. For now, the only way to go is a scary one, heading back to where he first started, the home of the croc monster. For one last time, he said a sad goodbye to the nest that kept him safe. He had some good times in that hole. If he only had some ant buddies to hang out with, it would have felt like a real home. Thinking of ant buddies, maybe this is the best time to go look for his first nest. If he could find his colony and be with his own kind, this life might actually be okay. After all, the monster that took him before he hatched couldn't have gone too far from the main nest. If he remembers the details right, the colony should be in one of the 3 paths near his starting point. Choosing to stay upbeat despite the danger, Anthony started his trip. His big goal is to find the queen and his ant brothers. Maybe he could even give his mom a big hug when they finally meet up. Moving away from the pond and following the glow, Anthony ran as fast as he could. He saw that the lines on the cave walls were much brighter than they were before. Also, they were beating like a heart more often. It was a really strange thing to see. When he got to the end of the glowing path, he slowed down and looked around carefully, hoping no monsters were waiting to jump him. After checking the open area ahead, he let out a sigh of relief. He's safe for the moment. To find the best way to go, Anthony turned on tunnel sense. Mapping out this mystery place will keep him away from the dangerous surface and the mean human troops. After scouting for a few minutes, his feelers started to pick something up. It was about 100 meters away from where he was standing. He could feel a real change in the air. Focusing all his energy on that change, he pointed his feelers in that direction. He was so busy following the trail that he accidentally hit his head on a wall. The signal kept going forward, but there were 2 different paths that might lead to it. Gandalf must be making him decide which one to take. After a quick look, and going with his gut, both ways seemed pretty bad. With no other options, he used the biomass he had saved to upgrade his feelers so he could be more accurate. Just like when he upgraded his sight, this level up caused a burning pain that made him roll around on the floor. He got mad at Gandalf for making him hurt just to get a slightly better chance at living. With his better senses, he confirmed that one of the paths had a very faint but hopeful smell. One of the ways felt a bit less like a death trap, so the choice was very easy to make. After a lot of thinking, Anthony made the move and pushed ahead. His motto for today is that being slow and careful is the best way to win. Halfway through the trip, his feelers popped up as joy filled his tiny body. He just caught a whiff of pheromones. By using a special scent gland, ants can leave a trail for others to find and follow. This might be it. After surviving on his own for what felt like a lifetime, his ant brothers were finally calling him back. If he could only see what was waiting on the other side of that trail, he wouldn't be celebrating at all. Webs of silk traps covered the area as a creature waited patiently for victims who weren't paying attention. Anthony moved like the wind as he followed what he thought were the scents of his family. He was totally excited, thinking the colony was calling him and lighting a path to bring one of their own back. Halfway through the trek, he caught himself. He can't let his emotions take over. He still remembers what happens when you get too ahead of yourself. His health hasn't fully returned to its max yet. For now, he'll have to keep moving down the unknown path until he can find a safer trail somewhere. As he went further, he noticed that the tunnel itself had become very messy. It was zigzagging in all sorts of random directions. While the path got more confusing, the shaking in the air also got stronger. His gut told him that something big was about to happen. Eventually, he reached a tight spot. The tunnel split into a very messy web of paths. He was getting dizzy just trying to keep track of which ones were safe to choose. Thankfully, his day of running around the caves paid off. His tunnel sense reached level 2, making it easier for him to keep his direction underground. This skill is his most trusted tool for moving through the winding roads of the mystery cave. To help his tunnel sense, Anthony planned to make and keep a simple set of marks to show which routes he had already walked. Hopefully, it would help. The first choice is always the hardest, but he quickly picked the path on the right. Going down this way wasn't as lucky as he thought it would be. The route wasn't very long, so he reached the open area at the end pretty fast. Out there, he saw a group of rats with lizard tails chewing on the bones of their unlucky prey. Anthony turned his ant butt around in a second and ran back to the last room. He tried to catch his breath while thinking about his next move after the first one failed. Walking to the start of the rightmost path, he wondered what mark would be best to show instant death. To keep it basic, he climbed up to the tunnel ceiling and marked it with a simple X. Hopefully, doing things this way would eventually lead him somewhere he could handle, somewhere a bit more manageable. Going through the next tunnel, he felt safe, almost good. In fact, this feeling could get him killed. Luckily, his instincts kept him from getting too relaxed. While walking along the cave walls, he saw a spiderweb neatly placed and perfectly hidden. Without his level 2 eyes, he would have walked right into this trap for sure. He wouldn't have seen it in time. Walking face first into the enemy's home would have been the end of his tale. Honestly, Anthony was mad. Those dumb spiders must think they are the kings of the bug world just because they can build something fancy to catch others. The way he sees it, those weirdos are just a bunch of lazy bums who let their webs do all the work instead of getting up and doing it themselves. He sees the honest and hard-working ant as the height of honor. If he only had about 200 of his brothers here to lead, he would never run from a spider. Words can't explain how much he hates those web-throwing freaks. Deciding to keep going to see what was up ahead, Anthony's speed slowed to a crawl. He saw the webs everywhere, but the builder was nowhere to be seen. That doesn't mean it wasn't close. Getting information is the most important thing for now. That's the best way to find the perfect path forward. Once he was out of the sticky area, he crawled back to the ground where there weren't many traps. Using his jaw, Anthony broke off a small rock from the floor. With a little bit of a throw, he tossed that rock into the middle of the spiderwebs, breaking the fancy trap with one loud thwack. Seeing that rock throwing was such a great way to clear a path, he kept on flinging. Anthony picked up another pebble with his jaws and worked on his pitching form. He was like a pro athlete, perfectly tossing rocks into the sticky mess. Once he cleared enough webs to open a fairly safe route, he dashed ahead. He knew the builder of this death trap had to be hiding close by. By breaking the web and letting the rocks get stuck, he was forcing the monster to come out. As expected, the 8-legged freak finally showed its ugly face. Right now, it probably thinks lunch has arrived. It only took one look for Anthony to almost get sick at such a gross thing. The creature had 8 hairy legs that looked like they could barely hold up its fat body. Compared to an ant's perfect 3 body parts and 6 useful legs, spiders are just a mistake of nature. As far as Anthony knows, spiders are usually lower on the food chain and about the same size as him. This many-legged monster might not even be a high-level threat. If the beast would just stay still for a second, he could aim a long-range attack perfectly. Wiggling his rear to get the right angle, Anthony waited until the last moment for the best shot. Once he figured out the wind and the spot, he messed up the first shot a bit. It looked nasty, but it only hit one of the spider's many legs. After that first hit, Anthony quietly followed the confused spider. It clearly thinks it's safe in the dark, but Anthony's stalking skills are the best. Once he got a better view using stealth, he fired a second acid shot with total confidence. This time, the slime hit the target right in the center. The hissing sound got louder as the spider began to melt. To make things even worse, Anthony turned off his stealth and started teasing the spider to make it chase him. This was the only way to pull the coward away from its home turf. Despite all his tough talk, Anthony admitted he was shaking inside his shell at the thought of the spider's rage. At least he reached a safe spot before it could grab him. If things got really bad, he thought about circling back to where the wolf lizards hang out. He could let the spider and the wolves fight it out while he watched from the side. In a perfect world, those dumb dogs would attack the spider as soon as he hid himself. If Anthony could slip away through that area to safety, it would be a perfect plan. Fortunately, he doesn't have to rely on a plan with so many risks. The angry and hurt spider seems to be just as careful as he is. It makes sense. Why move when you can just sit in a web and wait for food to come to you? After a meal, that spider would surely heal back to full strength. Anthony imagined himself as a spider. He could basically build a home where food comes to him, gets stuck, and he gets free biomass. He cursed spiders for living life on easy mode in this tough dungeon. His anger was through the roof. To calm down, Anthony decided the spider had to die very soon. A day has passed since their first fight. Even though he's mad, he still thought about the chances of winning very carefully. After a lot of thinking, he decided the odds were on his side. First, the tunnel is very bright. Even if his sight is only +2, the light helps him see the enemy easily. Second, based on his guesses, he and the spider are about the same strength as long as the web isn't an issue. With all this in mind, he could probably get some new biomass and feel better if he wins. The big question is, how does he get that freak out of the web? Phase 1 is done. With his 2 acid hits from yesterday, he probably took away about 5 HP. The safest way to handle this hunt is to keep bothering the spider, jumping the poor guy over and over until Anthony wins. After all, one bite from those venomous teeth could put him in a world of trouble. With his feelers up, eyes wide, and brain focused only on the kill, Anthony moved out. He can't make even one mistake. It didn't take him long to find the path full of webs. He checked every inch but couldn't find the builder at first. Luckily, he found a pile of spider eggs hidden close by. It's a bit mean, but these should be the perfect bait to bring the bug out. Just like the rocks from yesterday, he started throwing the eggs into the web. He hoped this would trick the spider into thinking some juicy food was stuck. Anthony kept tossing them, not stopping until his enemy appeared. After throwing the last egg, he just had to sit, watch, and wait. He hid behind a rock with a good view of the eggs. A few hours went by, and the coward still didn't show up. Maybe it got too scared after the last fight. To be sure, he threw a small rock right into the pile of stuck eggs. Since his old trick failed, he moved to the second part of his plan. This part needs more skill than just throwing things. He picked up tiny little rocks that wouldn't shake the web like the heavy ones did. Instead of tossing them, he carefully set them on the web, making almost no movement. Using this trick, he planned to sneak past the web wall quietly. If he placed enough of them, he could enter the center of the nest without setting off any alarms. Once he made a big enough gap with his quiet method, Anthony slowly walked into the enemy's home. He had never been this deep into a new place before. He had to be super careful because there could be hidden strings anywhere. One moment of not paying attention could get him stuck, and that mistake would be the end of him. Just a few minutes into his quiet break-in, his senses warned him of a danger coming from the back. The spider must have been watching him the entire time. The dummy was patient enough to wait for him to enter the nest, but it was dumb enough to come from behind. Anthony opened his tail and let another acid shot fly. It was a perfect hit. There was only one thing left to do to finish it. With a mean laugh, Anthony ran out of the web area while shouting insults. He was feeling really good about himself, like he was as fast as the wind or a gazelle jumping across the grass. But Anthony got way too full of himself and got caught by a loose string in midair. He tripped and hit the ground face first, mad at himself for acting like a jerk. Now he thought he might die before ever finding his colony or even one other ant. Anthony started crying his eyes out. He was way too young to go. He wasn't even a month old yet. He sobbed for a whole minute, but nothing bad happened. As it turned out, the loose string was very easy to snap. When he looked back, he saw the big spider lying on its back, its belly still burning from the acid. He really thought the spider was stronger than it was. Eating his catch gave him a new kind of biomass from the Aranea. It turned out it was just a baby spider monster. Anthony felt like a baby killer. The name seemed to fit. He was worried that eating the tiny bit of meat wouldn't even give him 1 point of biomass. He admitted that his anger toward the poor bug was probably wrong. After just a few hits of acid, it had died. With no way to heal, its health had run out fast. The experience he got wasn't very much either. To his surprise, he got 2 biomass points for finding a new species and eating it. Much calmer now, he left the web area while breaking all the sticky traps on his way out.